Please elaborate on the Fairness Doctrine being eliminated by Ronald Reagan and the FCC in 1987. So there was this metaphorical idea, and it's built for bipartisan politics. It's not built for real life, that somehow if you present a political view, you have to present the opposing view and give it equal time over public airwaves. This does not work in a multipolar world. This does not work in a world of the internet. This does not work when you have private companies that run media. So if media is not for profit, media are public institutions, and there's only two viewpoints on anything, Fairness Doctrine makes a lot of sense. If media is private, media is over the internet, and there's dozens of ways to look at something, it's not possible to present all those viewpoints. And you end up getting into these asinine situations. Like, let's say there's some weird cult out there, and they're gouging people's eyes out, because they believe that when you get your true sight only by removing your false eyes, and they're doing it to children. If you had a Fairness Doctrine, you'd have to go and present the side of the cult that's gouging children's eyes out and say, oh, well, let's go talk to them and present them with a Steelman argument, why it's a good idea to gouge children's eyes out for the cult of the sightless eye. It's just absurd. And it was made for a different time when there were 4 channels. They were over public airwaves. The product was being given away for free. And those broadcast companies were almost like government institutions. They were like public-private partnerships. Doesn't work at all on the internet. What needs to happen is you need to have a veracity system, because that's then something you can use to engage with news. So every single time that I see a political meme, every single time that I see a headline, the very first thing I do is I go to GPT, and I go to Perplexity, and I go to Google Gemini, and I go to Claude. I throw these things in and say, fact check this for me. And you know what? They'll come through and they'll tell me a bunch of stuff. And a lot of people immediately go, oh, yeah, they're all social and woke. And oh, my God. Guys, I have critical thinking skills. I can read the output of the AI. But what it does for me is it gives me at least a basis to ground it of what is the source material. Is this completely made up? Or is this based on an actual event that happened? And if so, who reported on it? When? Where did they report on it? What data is available? All this different stuff. I'm a big boy. I can do that stuff. That is a modern day Fairness Doctrine. It's a lens of veracity. And then you start going to your second order, third order, fourth order. What would have to be true for the thing that I'm looking at to be true? Pretty simple, right? So if somebody said, like the government is hiding evidence about, raping children in Tennessee. Okay. All right. Some cabal of pedophiles in Tennessee or something like that. Look, Nashville. There you go. All right. Well, what would have to be true for that to be true? Well, that means a group of people in our government, local, state, and federal, are aware of this, and for some reason are either purposely keeping it quiet or blackmailed into keeping it quiet. Why? Then you ask why, and then you just keep going, that second, the third, that fourth order. And then you ask questions. Okay, well, how long has this been going on? 50 years. Okay, they've been keeping this silent for 50 years. A large institution has been able to keep this quiet and private for 50 years. What would have to be true for that? It means that it's multi-generational, okay, because people don't stay in their job for 50 years. So what does it mean? The new guy comes on in, and the old guy's like, oh, by the way, Bill, I got to tell you about something. We're raping a bunch of kids in Nashville, but you got to keep it quiet. Oh, okay, that sounds great. Here's the manual on this whole thing. So that means 100% of the people that were recruited that came in had to have a knowledge transfer about the pedophile cabal in Nashville and learn all that stuff and and have no problems at all about it, not talk to anybody about it. You see? And so that's your next level. Once you've created a baseline, is you start asking that question and you start thinking in your head, okay, well, what would have to be true? Is like Epstein is a great example of it, where we all know about it. We all can talk about it. And it's very clear that something occurred there. And it has the telltale signs of a conspiracy against the people. Clearly, an intelligence agency was doing stuff. Clearly, people were blackmailed. Clearly, this is a tactic and technique that's being used again and again. And the reason why we don't know more is people in positions of power today are compromised with that content. And that's why they keep trying to kill the story. And every time we ask questions for basic things like who's on a client list, and it's not a hypothetical. George Bush, under his administration, passed a law that if you're a sex tourist, you go abroad to Thailand and go rape a boy, you could be charged with a sex trafficking crime here in the United States, even though it occurred in Bangkok. Okay? So that very same law could be used on everybody on the Epstein client list, even if they're in international waters or on Epstein's island. And there's no statutes of limitations in many cases for this type of child rape. So why is there not an investigation? Because everybody knew it happened. What happened to tapes? Why is there no special prosecutor looking into it? Because there's probably a pretty high probability that the people currently in power, some of them are connected to it. And they're doing everything in their power just to forget about it and move on. Otherwise, it's free political points. Because the people who are out of power right now, if we investigated it, we could destroy their careers. Pretty simple. Okay, so that's how you do critical thinking. You think about these things, and it takes time, and it takes effort. The Fairness Doctrine doesn't solve that problem at all. What? You're going to outsource all your cognitive load to the same media that has absolutely no intention or interest in the truth? When I was being interviewed by that Reuters person, I said, hey, you want to read a negative story about Donald Trump, about world liberty, and about Trump token. Tell me, in the last 4 years, how many negative stories did you write about Gary Gensler? In the last 4 years, how many times did you come and defend our industry and say what the Biden regime was doing was wrong and it was Kafkaesque? Instead, you supported them. So I'm going to trust those people to accurately and fairly represent the cryptocurrency industry. I'm going to trust those people to write a story that is in our best interest? Absolutely not. You need to build tools of veracity, tools of critical thinking. You need to make truth an economic agent. If we care about it and there's money to be made in revealing the truth. Imagine this, the Epstein client list. If there was $1 billion bounty on revealing the names of those people and why they did it, where they did it, and who's blackmailing them, do you think that we would know? If $1 billion was on the table, we'd know. Somebody would figure it out because that's a lot of money, man. People have murdered for far, far less than that. But there is no veracity market. There's no prediction market for these types of things. And that's why you don't get to the truth. So that's where you get honesty from, is making truth an economic agent. And collectively, we all put money in. I'd put $1 million into that pot. I know a lot of billionaires have put money into that pot to find out who's on the list and what they did and, the extent of the relationships that they have. Because I'm sorry, we have no moral authority as a nation. If the U.S. government is aware of its leaders raping children and just says we just have to move on, the U.S. government has no moral authority. It's gone. It's completely gone. Full stop. It's one of the darkest, most heinous crimes a person can do. And if they have no desire to look into that heinous and dark crime, especially if it was done by a nation state for the purpose of extortion and blackmail, and our foreign policy is being controlled in that way, that's dark. And we should look into that. So I'd put money into that pot, and a lot of people would put money into that pot to reveal this whole thing. So anyway, enough about that. We're going to go down roads that we can't come back from.